Mermail and Atlantean got incredible new support in Rage of the Abyss. Let's talk about it. This will be an in-depth deck profile and combo tutorial for Mermails. In the description you will find timestamps for the deck profile and the combo, as well as some DB replays for your convenience. Feel free to utilize those as you see fit. Mermail's first debut was in Abyss Rising at the end of 2012. With it debuted the Atlantean cards, being key water pieces to utilize with your discard effects. The deck also utilized the previously released Deep Sea Diva and the Undyne package to send waters and to summon Atlanteans or Divas from your deck. This was at a point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history where trap cards ran rampant. In order to stop your opponent from making their explosive plays, you play trap cards to complement your engine. Nowadays, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh is very different. A singular starter can end an entire board with enough interruptions to disrupt your opponent's entire hand. So, how can we take a deck that was released over a decade ago to combat these new meta threats? I believe people have taken the wrong approach to the Mermail deck, playing cards like Deep Sea Diva and building it as a combo deck, when it should be played as a mid-range deck, like Unchained. It shouldn't be seen as an all-in combo deck which focuses on hand looping the opponent and leaving them with nothing. You can play a regular game plan of just putting up some interruptions and play for follow-up, and you'll be perfectly fine with that. So for the monsters, I'm playing 3 copies of Mermail Atlantean. Not the best starter in the modern Mermail deck, but it still gets the job done. Being able to trigger your Atlanteans and Mermail effects by discarding them is very key. Next I play 3 copies of Mermail Abyss Pike. Some people only play 1 of this. I believe that's very incorrect. It is definitely a card you want to see. Pairing this with any of your discard cards allows you to trigger their effects, as well as search your engine cards. Particularly playing 3 copies of this is very important for another card I play in my deck, allowing me to extend through Handtraps, rather than just outright losing to a single point of disruption. For the new card that was released in Rage of the Abyss, Abyssrhine. Again, this card, similar to Pike, is a card you want to see in every single opening hand. It's an extender and a starter card. It just makes sense to play max copies of this. In order for your deck to flow, no pun intended, you need to play enough cards that allow you to trigger your Atlanteans. This does exactly that. And for the last Mermail monster, I'm playing 1 copy of Abyss Gundy. Generally you tutor this out of the deck with Teus and then use it for the combo. Then for the Atlanteans, I'm playing 3 copies of Dragoons. A not once per turn search for nearly every single card in your deck makes this an obvious card you're trying to abuse in your combos. Another new card is Mermail Shadow Guard. This is the second best discard, being able to tutor any Mermail or Atlantean monster from your deck. Albeit being once per turn, not as good as Dragoons, but still something you can utilize in your combo to extend through Handtraps and allow you to build up your board. And then for the best starter in your deck, 3 copies of Neptabyss+Atlantean Prince. There are enough ways to tutor this from your deck, so there's no need to play bad cards like Deep Sea Diva, which is just a hand trap magnet. When your opponent uses Impermanence on your Neptabyss, or Impermanence on your Pike that you summon off the Shadow Guards with the combo, I'm gonna show you later, you have more ways to extend through rather than if they imperm the Deep Sea Diva. That's why Diva is a bad card in this deck and should not be played at all. And for that last Atlantean in the main deck, I'm playing 1 copy of Heavy Infantry. In the combo you search this and you can trigger it in the opponent's turn with Abyssrhine by drawing another card and then popping a face-up card. It's also searchable out to a lot of different floodgates or just annoying monsters you're trying to deal with. And for the non-Merlantian monsters, I'm playing 1 copy of Mooling Glacier, the Elemental Lord. You summon this in nearly every single combo, and the reason why it's so good, apart from ripping 2 cards from their hand and leaving them with only 4 cards to their turn, is you get to see what they're playing. So if you go first to game 1, and you get to summon Mooling Glacier, either your opponent scoops outright to not show you what they're playing, or you get to see what they're playing. Or perhaps you utilize a card like Deep Sea Minstrel by looking at their hand, and now you know exactly what they're playing. This was a big reason why the millers were so broken in tier elements. Being able to see what your opponent plays often forced them to scoop before you even resolved your full combo. If you just go Minstrel, pitch Dragoons turn 1, they're probably just gonna scoop because they know that they're gonna get hand looped and full comboed on if they don't have any hand traps. Or if they have 1, you can just rip it away with the Minstrel. Having such a key auto win in your deck is something that gets overlooked. And for the last monster, I'm playing 1 copy of Super Ancient Deep Sea King Coelacanth. So Abyssrhine can summon this right from your deck. So when you use this card as an extender when you've been hand trapped a couple of times, summoning Coelacanth and then bringing out 3 copies of Abyss Pike, or even 2 if you just have that in your deck, allows you to make explosive plays after the hand traps. I will show some combos utilizing this card at the end. And for the spell cards, I'm playing 1 copy of Triaina. This is searchable in the combo and a premature burial for a Mermail Atlantean monster, as well as in the graveyard you can banish it to shuffle back your resources. And then the sole copy of Pot of Prosperity, seeing as it is limited to 1. You can quite easily activate this for 6 in this deck, so it's a very strong opener. In this deck I believe Handtraps are the way to go. You don't have enough ways to extend through the disruptions. Perhaps after Supreme Darkness coming out next year, you can change around this deck and play board breakers instead. But for right now, I believe Handtraps are the way to go. So I'm playing 3 copies of Perulia. Additionally, you can normal summon this in a pinch and make a Bahamut Shark. I'm playing 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Ash, 3 copies of Imperm, and 3 copies of the newly released Dominus Impulse. So this locks you out of Earth, Wind, and Light monsters. However, the only main deck attribute of those I play is Nibiru. So if you draw this card and Nibiru, if you go first, it's still fine because you can set this card. However, if you go second, you may need to use the Nibiru before you use the Impulse, unless you want your Nibiru to be dead. For the extra deck, I'm playing 1 copy of Mermail Atlantean, 1 copy of SP, 1 copy of Coral Anemone to bring back your water monsters from the graveyard, and to climb up into the new Mermail King Neptabyss. So I'm not maining Mikasuchi or any other equip spell to search off of this, apart from the premature burial that you saw earlier that's used in the combo to make an additional rank 4 play. Because people aren't really main decking a lot of board breakers apart from Tempai, I usually link this off into a great Bubble Reef to draw additional cards and see more Handtraps to complement my field. Bubble Reef can also, in your standby phase if it survives, banish the Anemone and then bring it right back for more extension. And for the last link monster, I'm playing 1 copy of Celantis. There's not a great deal of generic water link monsters you could utilize. Hopefully they will print more generic water link monsters, with effects similar to those of SP or the Nightmare monsters. The extra deck utility is something that I miss in this deck, but usually your hand trap and your engine is good enough at going second. For the Exceed monsters, I'm playing 2 copies of Totally Awesome as well as 2 copies of Bahamut Shark. I'm not playing Trite, because I believe summoning Toad is just much better. Toad is an insane boss monster to end on. Even if they top deck something like Infinite Impermanence and use it to negate your Toad, you can steal the Imperm and then use it in your own turn to disrupt whatever they ended on. Toad also adds you back waters from the graveyard, so you're sure to have follow-up. I'm playing 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. Instead of making the second Shark into Toad in the combo, I tend to make Abyss Dweller in the matchups where it shines. Against Yubel, I prefer making Toads because it's not a pure Yubel deck, it's a Fiendsmith Link deck. But for something like Unchained, making Dweller just shuts off all of their effects. I'm playing 1 copy of Poseidra Abyss for the combo as well as 1 Abyss Gaios. The rank 7 Abyss Trite coming in Supreme Darkness next year will definitely be included in my extra deck. A lot of the time when you go first, you just make the Gaios just to rank up into Poseidra Abyss for the combo. Since I'm playing Minstrel and some Handtraps, I decided to play a couple Synchros in my deck as well. I'm playing 1 Croco Dragon. This is used in the main combo to draw into more disruptions as well as being a pop on your opponent's turn. As well as 1 Shenjing. Shenjing can be triggered with Abyssrhine in the opponent's turn to banish cards from their field and graveyard, as well as being a potent card going second to break apart their board and remove their follow-up. The side deck is tailored to my local metagame, but you can definitely use other cards in your deck to complement whatever strategies you need to beat at your local OTS. So for the side deck, I'm playing 1 copy of Marksman against mainly Labyrinth or other trap strategies. Being able to search this in your combo instead of an heavy infantry and pitching it off of Abyssrhine to destroy their back rows in the end phase helps to not lose to cards like Sphere Mode pair with their trap suite. Mermail is quite a fast deck, so you don't need to play the full set of Ghost Sister. However, I wanted to play 1 copy of this in my deck because you can search it with Abyss Pike, seeing as the level 3 water monster. So against Tempai, when you go first, you can just side this in and search it with Pike, and they cannot OTK you. This deck's follow-up is very strong if you can get to your next turn, so just surviving 1 turn is very important. Toad adds you back resources, and Abyssrhine as well as your combo draws you into more cards. So usually you can crack apart their midfield that they made through your disruptions. Then I'm playing 3 copies of Fuvalos. I see a lot of people complain online about this card as well as Perulia. My opinion on these cards is perhaps a bit different. I'm a very big fan of the Mulcharmies. I believe modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a large issue in going first. And a card like Maxi only adds to this, seeing as Maxi is better when you go first. Pairing it with your board is better than going second and Maxiing them. However, the card like Mulcharmies, you can't really use these going first unless you pass on nothing. Konami also has a trend of printing a deck or card to play around cards that were previously released. So, for example, in Tournaments format, when the Bystials were introduced, the next set we got Thrust to punish a Bystial by searching Instant Fusion in the tier deck. Or when Red Eye's Dark Dragoon was released, we received talents and droplet to handle its effects. I'm sure we'll see plenty of decks in the future where you can search cards from your deck and then summon them from the hand to play around Fuvalos, but still tutoring from the deck. Something like Nightmare Throne does this perfectly. Or perhaps you just summon cards from the graveyard instead. This card is not the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! But this card is very good at deterring people from playing all-in combo strategies such as Rika or Runic Synchro. These decks which are not capable of going second in most games. The decks that just do everything above and beyond with one card, or the decks that are 40 engine cards and they cannot go second to save their life. Fuvalos as well as Puruli are great at deterring these decks, which you don't want in your metagame anyway. These cards are good for the health of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm sure we'll see that as we move forward. For the spell cards, I'm citing one copy of Misuchi. So board breakers such as Dark Ruler or Super Poly are not the most common in the main deck, but perhaps they bring these in post-side. So being able to search a card which can negate Super Poly or Dark Ruler is very important. Mikasuchi can actually negate Super Poly because it doesn't activate. It's the continuous effect to just negate it on resolution. One copy of Call by the Grave to negate opposing Mulch armies. I also cite this card in against Yubel even when I go second, being able to negate cards like Phantom of Yubel or banish their Soul of Rage. I have 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, mainly to beat Floodgates but also against Labyrinth. I really like Cosmic because you can chain it to the trap cards to prevent Lady from setting their Floodgate from the deck, which they search and then use Coup Clock to activate it immediately. It's a bit better than Duster or Lightning Storm in that way. You also want to take out Purulio when you go first. So having Cosmic in your deck, which you can put in against most matchups when you go first, rather than the dead Purulias. It wouldn't be modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Without some Floodgates, so I'm playing 1 copy of Gozen Match and 1 copy of Anti-Spell Fragrance. So every card in my deck is a water, so when Gozen shines, it's an incredible Floodgate. And Anti-Spell is really good too, because you can protect both of these with Toad. Particularly Gozen is very good if you get hand-trapped a lot, because this just shuts down their engine on the next turn. Anti-Spell can do the same, but it depends a bit more on the deck. And I have 3 copies of Evenly Matched. This might not make sense in a hand-trap deck, but this is mainly for my local metagame. There's a lot of different decks where you want to evenly to clear away all the resources and use the Mermail cards to remove the rest of what they have. Some people may also be inclined to set multiple cards just to play around Moulin Glacier in your combo, even though I usually side out to Moulin when I go second because it just ends up being a bad card. So let's talk a little bit about the combos. If you open with Neptabyss, what can you accomplish? And for those people who are wondering who want to play against Mermail, what do you hand trap? The best card to use your soul effect negation on, if you were to open just 1 hand trap, is Neptabyss. And this is where Coelacanth really shines. Being able to have any water monster paired with your Neptabyss allows you to make Coelacanth combo through infinite impermanence. Another key card you could consider using infinite impermanence on is Pike. The issue with using it on Pike though is you still get Moulin Glacier. So what does the combo look like if you open just 1 Neptabyss as well as any discard? Well, you go normal summon Neptabyss, send Shadow Squad for cost to search the Dragoons. Next you use Shadow Squad's effect to summon Pike from your deck. Pike discards the Dragoons and searches Rhine. Dragoons searches your Moulin Glacier. Next use Rhine's effect, tributing the Neptabyss from the field to search Teus from your deck to your hand. Then you trigger Neptabyss to bring back the Dragoons. You overlay the Pike and the Dragoons for Bahamut Shark, detaching the Dragoons to summon Toad. Then you use Dragoons to search Deep Sea Minstrel from your deck. Then you discard Deep Sea Minstrel to summon Teus to your field. And with Teus, you search Gundy. Now you have 5 water monsters in the graveyard, so you can immediately drop the Moulin Glacier. Keep in mind, the Bahamut Shark was your 4th summon and Toad was your 5th. So if they have Nibiru, they have to pair it. Also keep in mind, if they do have Imperm with Nibiru, which is a typical combo to pair with, if people don't play Valor in the current format, the Toad negating the Imperm, taking it, gives you 1 disruption for their turn, and the Toad can add back Neptabyss for your follow-up. But for the combo, let's say we were not hand-trapped. So we summon Moon Glacier and rip 2 cards from their hand. Then we link off the Teus and the Bahamut Shark to summon Coral Anemone. With Anemone, we bring back the Shadow Squad from our graveyard. We use the Shadow Squad to discard a random card from the hand to make all of our monsters level 7. We overlay both for level 7s into Abyss and then Poseidra Abyss, linking off these 2 for Neptabyss. We trigger Poseidra Abyss's effect to discard Gundy from our hand, bringing back 3 level 3 monsters from our graveyard to the field. Next we trigger Gundy as well as Neptabyss to search the Equip spell and reborn back Pike from our graveyard. We synchro these 3 away, considering we have a tuner and 2 non-tuners, to make a level 9, to make Croco Dragon, drawing us 2 additional cards. Next, we activate the equip spell to bring back Dragoons from our graveyard, overlaying both of those into a second copy of Bahamut Shark, detaching Dragoons to summon the second Toad. We trigger Dragoons' effect, searching heavy infantry from our deck to the hand. Then we can link off the Bahamut Shark as well as the Mermail King into a great Bubble Reef. So this is the end board of just one Neptabyss as well as one discard. You end on Bubble Reef, drawing you an additional card in your opponent's standby phase, as well as another in your turn if it survives. You have heavy infantry, which you can utilize with Abyssrhine to banish this, to draw another card in their turn, discarding the heavy infantry and popping a card. When you discard the heavy infantry, either with Crocodile or Abyssrhine, you can add it back with Toad when you negate a card, and then utilize the other effect to discard it and trigger another pop. And the second Toad can get you back a Neptabyss for follow-up. Keep in mind at this point your opponent has 4 cards in their hand. You have 2 Omni Negates. You have 3 pops, 2 heavy infantry and 1 from Crocodile. And you get to draw a whole bunch of cards, so if you see any other hand traps, you can utilize those to stop your opponent. Now that's all fine and dandy, but what happens when our Neptabyss gets hand trapped? They probably will not use Imperm on Pike, considering they will still get Moon Glaciared and they don't want to lose their cards in the hand, so they do the safe option of just Imperming the Neptabyss after you send the Shadow Water to the graveyard as cost. Well, if you have any other water monster in your hand, and any random discard, well, when you go first, you're going to have 5 cards in hand, so this card is always going to be in your hand. Obviously, when you have multiple engine cards, you can usually push through multiple hand traps, but let's say they have just 1 Impermanence on your Neptabyss. By utilizing Coelacanth, we can still pass on a very formidable field. So let's say we normal summon Neptabyss, and we dump Shadow Squad to the graveyard as cost, and your opponent Imperms you. You use Squad to summon Pike from your deck, pitching the Perulia to search Rhine. Use Rhine to tribute away the Neptabyss to summon Coelacanth from your deck. Neptabyss now triggers to bring back the Squad from your graveyard, and you use Coelacanth to discard a card in your hand and summon out 2 more copies of Pike from your deck. From here, you overlay the 2 Pike into Bahamut Shark. You link away Squad and Coelacanth into Coral Anemone. Use Anemone's effect to bring back any of your low attack water monsters. Link those 2 off into Neptabyss. Use Shark's effect to detach Abyss Pike to summon a Toad. Then you can use King to search the equip spell. You play the equip spell and you bring back Pike from the graveyard. Then you link the Shark and the King away to summon a Bubble Reef. Next you overlay the 2 Pikes into a second Shark, detaching to summon a second Toad. Now obviously if you open any more real Mermail or Atlantean cards, let's say you had a Dragoons in your hand, you can obviously do much more than this. There are multiple 2, 3 or even 4 card combinations where you play through multiple hand traps